After 2 years, I married my boyfriend, and now he's my husband. A few months later, we needed money because we didn't have much. One day, my husband's friends and his girlfriend came over. While we were talking, they found out about our financial problems. I went to the kitchen to make coffee, and my husband's friends followed me. He said, "Look at me. I'm very rich, and I can give you a lot of money, but I want something in return." I asked, "What do you mean?" He leaned in and whispered, "Yourself." I was very angry, so I went back to my husband and sat beside him, holding his hand. My husband smiled at me and said, "Honey, I love you too." We still didn't know how to make money. The next day, my husband called his friend and asked for a loan. His friend gave us $1,000. It lasted for a month, but after that, we didn't have money again. A month later, my husband's friend came back to our house. In the kitchen, he asked, "Do you remember what I said?" I replied, "I will never do that to my husband." He said, "If you don't, I won't lend your husband money anymore." I left him and sat next to my husband. The next day, my husband called his friend again to borrow money, but he said, "I won't lend you money anymore," and hung up. I said, "Don't worry, honey, we will manage." My husband asked how. "We don't even have $1." I secretly called his friend and asked, "Can you lend us just $500?" He said, "Darling, if you don't do what I ask by tomorrow night, I won't lend you money, and I'll take back the $1,000 I already gave you." I was confused. I didn't want to do this to my husband, but I also didn't want to leave him in this situation. The next day, when my husband wasn't home, his friend came over. He said, "Answer me now, yes or no." I replied, "I already told you no." He said, "Okay then, I'll go to your husband and ask for my money back." I said, "Do whatever you want." He left, and I felt so bad. I cried and kept asking myself what I should do. That night, when my husband came home, he was very upset. I asked what happened. He said, "My friend came to my workplace and humiliated me in front of everyone. He told me if you don't pay me by tomorrow night, I'll have you thrown in prison." I understood that his friend was sending me a message. If I didn't do what he wanted, he'd have my husband thrown in prison. Later that night, while my husband was sleeping, I secretly went to his friend's house. I knocked on the door, he opened it, and I said, "I got your message." He said, "I knew you'd come." The next morning, when my husband woke up, I was next to him. He looked at me and said, "Honey, take a good look at me. Your husband is going to prison now." I smiled and said, "No, he's not." Then I reached under the pillow and pulled out $1,000. He asked, "What's this?" I said, "Don't ask, just go and give it to him." He hesitated and said, "But if I give him this money, we won't have any left for ourselves." I said, "Don't worry, we still have $2,000 in the bank." He said, "I don't know how to thank you." I replied, "We're a family. Just give him the money in front of your colleagues to get your dignity back." Later, he went, and I went to the kitchen to cook. While cooking, I felt sick and threw up. I was worried and took a test. It was positive. I was pregnant. I was so happy but didn't know how to tell my husband. I decided to set the table, turn off the lights, light some candles, and wear my best dress. But it was so late that I fell asleep at the table. Then he opened the door, and the sound woke me up. I walked toward him. His whole body was soaked from the rain. I said, "Honey, you're late." I was worried. He didn't say anything and just looked around, then asked, "Why does the house look like this?" I said, "Honey, I have something to tell you. I'm pregnant." He suddenly slapped me and shouted, "Whose child is this?" I was shocked and fell to the ground. I asked, "What do you mean?" He said, "My friend told me everything about what happened between you two. He asked me, 'How did you get the money? How could you do this to me?'" I cried and said, "He's lying. I didn't do anything with him. I got the money another way." He didn't believe me. He said, "Pack your things and leave now." Do you think she's innocent? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to stay updated on the next episode.